Grandparents. At Vanguard, you're more than just a grandparent. You're the family historians. You fill your closets with heirlooms, family photos, and letters from long ago. You're always planning the next family reunion, even at the reunion. Because for you, time well spent is time spent on them. At Vanguard, you're more than just an investor. You're an owner. Because the future you're building is bigger than yourself. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor. Whatever brings you the most joy this holiday season, Best Buy has the tech to make it happen. Maybe it's welcoming your guests with a sparkling clean home with the help of a new robot vacuum, or cooking dinner to crispy perfection in less time with a new air fryer. Or maybe it's just a cozy holiday movie marathon on a new flat-screen TV. Best Buy has you covered no matter what you're looking for. Get your gifts at Best Buy fast and free, including free next-day delivery on thousands of items. Visit bestbuy.com or download the app to shop now.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wrestling Omakase. It is episode number 240, and this week I am pleased to be joined by a returning guest. Hello again, Matt.
Hey, John. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, so you were on for the Halloween Havoc Retro Roulette, so with another WCW Retro Roulette here, I figured, who better than Matt? Just like WCW reference there at the Canyon.
I was going to say, as a huge fan of Canyon, I really appreciate that reference.
But yes, he's not on the episode, though. We didn't get any.
No, unfortunately not.
No Canyon matches. But yes, we're back for another Retro Roulette, this time around Starrcade, our first time ever doing Starrcade. And the randomizer, we'll get to it in a second, I guess, but it gave us a really weird group of shows and a lot of interesting matches, but not a lot of great matches again. So I guess we'll get into all that. But how's life been treating you, Matt? What have you been up to?
It's been pretty good for being this time of year and not getting much sunshine. We had a busy day of kids' sports in my household today, so I appreciate you willing to do this recording a little bit later.
Oh, I love doing it. It was perfect for me because I was like, I can just wait till Saturday. I am the ultimate procrastinator with these retro episodes, so I'm like, I don't want to do it until the day I have to record, which means it's all fresh in my mind, right? I watched it all today, so
it makes perfect sense.
But mostly it's just like, I'm glad if it's like 2:00, obviously I have to watch some stuff before today, but since it's 6:00 Eastern, I'm like, oh, this works out perfect. I can just watch it all on Saturday instead of trying to fit it in on weekdays. But
that's awesome. So but other than that, it's just been the usual grind and keep on pushing through things.
What did I do this week? I went to Dynamite, the All Elite Wrestling television program at the UBS Arena, which is at Elmont, New York, which is like, okay, people who don't know New York State geography, they basically put this place, I think I might have gone over this before, but they put this place on the least Long Island spot they could possibly call Long Island. Like, you basically cross the fucking street and you're back in Queens. I know Queens is technically on Long Island, but nobody thinks of it like that. So basically the moment that Queens ends and Long Island starts, that's where this is. So it's like, it is super close to me. Like on when there's no traffic, which obviously is not that often, it's like a 15-minute drive from where I am, like on the border of the Bronx and Queens. So yeah, very, very cool to have a venue like that right in your backyard. And I already gone to the Rangers Islanders a few weeks ago, so I'd already the first Ranger game at that building, which was very expensive, honestly. I mean, the first ever Rangers game in the Islanders' new building, they wanted like $200 just to get in the door. So, I did not have great seats to that. I didn't spend much more money on it, but still great to go there and see the Rangers win. And then, here we were back for Dynamite, much cheaper tickets. I think they were like barely over 100 for like right dead center in the 100 level. And there it was a fun show. I wouldn't say it was like a great show by any stretch. I mean, the one thing about it is like, okay, so you have a show where the AEW fans, I guess, were crowing about the ticket sales compared to the WWE ticket sales, right? Which was a lot higher. I believe it was 9,500 for this Dynamite versus like 6,000 for Raw a few weeks ago. I would love to have known what the fuck that 6,000 people at that Raw felt like, because 9,500 in an arena the size of UBS really felt like a sparse crowd. And part of the problem is like it's an arena that seats 17,500 for hockey, and obviously at a hockey game you do not have floor seats. You have that's where they're fucking playing hockey, right?
Right.
So where the ring is, when you have all these floor seats, you already for this 9,500 people, however many people is on the floor. I don't know if it's like 1,000 or 2,000 or what. So that means there's even less people in the giant bowl in the seating area. So when we're sitting on the side across from the hard cam, like almost everybody, and you're just looking at all these empty seats all night, like because the hard cam side has nobody. They did have some people, like very few people. You can see it on my. I posted a Twitter feed of Hook's entrance, or a recording on Twitter, I should say, of Hook's entrance, and people kept. I had to mute the thread because people kept fucking tweeting. They would look at all the empty seats. I'm like, okay, it's the hard cam side, and it's like I don't know what you expected 9,500 people to look like in a 17, an arena that sits 17.5. I mean, right. It's gonna look sparse on that side, but anyway. So yeah, so the atmosphere, like, it wasn't my favorite show for atmosphere. I mean, like the Grand Slam show in Queens, which was I believe it was like 18,000 or something, like some crazy number. I mean, that had way better atmosphere than this. This, like, you could feel, the people were loud enough, and the people that were there were excited to be there. But like, just being in a building that big that feels half full,
right?
It doesn't. It does that. It does detract from the atmosphere. The same kind of thing happened at that Texas show, the G1 night one, where it's like, okay, 5,000 fans is quite a lot of fans actually, but they're in a giant 20,000 seat building, and it just feels it does take things down a little bit.
Yeah, whenever you're in a giant building and it's that underfilled, it just can't help but take from the atmosphere, just from the sight lines to how the sound sometimes gets lost in the building. It's just not the same as having that exact same number more tightly packed together. Although in these times of global pandemic, maybe it's a good thing you had some room to spread around.
Well, we didn't really in our row. I mean, these sections, they completely filled them. But then, like, you could see across,
That's true, of course. Yeah, the way they move everyone together for the camera. So, oh well, they had a chance.
But yeah, I mean, I hope they run it again, because again, it is so easy and convenient for me to get to. But like, next time they run it, maybe they should run it for like a special episode or something, so they could actually fill it. But being there for MJF's, that whole MJF saga was really fun. He was so ridiculously over with this crowd. And then obviously, as someone who loves hockey, the fact that CM Punk's entire promo was just based around shitting on the Islanders was really funny. I went to the show, I should say, in my Rangers jersey, which I'm like, haha, I'm going to troll the Islanders. And then 10 other people had that same idea, because I kept seeing Rangers jerseys around the arena. But yeah, it is very funny when a wrestler insults the Islanders in Long Island. It's like half the people are going to cheer that, because there's a lot of Rangers fans, at this show in Long Island. That's pretty much what happened. Like a bunch of people in my section were like chanting "Let's go Rangers" and stuff. When Punk was was making fun of the Islanders. But yeah,
as a Manchester United fan, it reminds me of whenever, and I've just seen these on TV, haven't been to a WWF show in Manchester. I always do better things when I'm in Manchester than go to WWF shows. But when a wrestler will wear a Manchester United jersey out there and then start ripping on Manchester United and rip them off, and half the crowd cheers anyways because half of Manchester hates United. So
Yeah.
not always as good of a heel heat move as they think.
But in this case, it worked because the people still kind of rallied. Like, I was worried it was going to, like, you know, hurt Punk and help MJF, what they're going for, or help Punk and hurt MJF. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
but when Punk really started leaning into the Chicago is better than New York stuff, that gets everybody on the same side because,
Yep.
you know, people in New York hate Chicago for whatever reason. I don't really get it. I've always, the few times I've been to Chicago, I thought it was a very nice city, but they have like a weird rivalry there. And yeah, that really got all the fans to rally around, you know, New York and Long Island and stuff. But yeah, just being there for the whole MJF saga through the Battle Royal was easily the highlight of the show. It was kind of downhill after that, other than the Hook debut, which was really cool to be there for.
Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, they trained that guy to basically wrestle like, if you closed your eyes and imagined what Taz's son would wrestle like, it was exactly that. So,
which seems like the right thing to do with him. You know, it's again probably better than the WWE method of picture what this next generation should be or second generation wrestler should be, and then do the complete opposite.
Yeah, this is very whatever. I saw that Jobber Nation guy on Twitter was like, "Oh, he's not better than Braun Breaker or even Dominic," and it's like, okay. I don't know about Braun Breaker. I've actually never seen him wrestle. The Steiner child, I guess, that they are not calling Steiner for God knows what reason. But he's definitely better than Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio is like one of the worst wrestlers I've ever seen, I think.
Right. So. No need to engage with someone offering such wisdom as that.
But yeah, you know, pretty fun show. And yeah, that, you know, I guess that's all I've been up to lately. What did I do last? I guess I went to. Did I go to any hockey games since the last? I think I went to Rangers and Flyers since we last did this, which was another Rangers win. So they've been winning a lot of games. And I'm going to see the Rangers and the Predators this Sunday or tomorrow as I'm recording this. So hopefully they win that one as well. I think they've only lost. I've attended a lot of games already this season. They've only lost once, so hopefully they can keep it going. And then next week I'm going to the Nutcracker, which you know, Nicole wanted to go to, which is, you know, I've seen it before. It's you know, as ballets go, it's very basic, obviously, but it's
I've seen it before as well. Very enjoyable experience. So
yeah. We're seeing it, I guess, at the what the hell, the famous New York one that the name escapes me right now. Is it just called the New York City Ballet? Oh, Lincoln Center, duh. That's where it is, Lincoln Center. So, you know, I've been there a few times actually for ballet and like for orchestra stuff and everything. But yeah, so we're going to Lincoln Center. You can tell I'm a real patron of the arts, everybody. Going to Lincoln Center to see the Nutcracker on Friday. And yeah, and that's pretty much it, I guess, before my big trip to Vegas at the start of January. So we'll talk about what that means for the show when we get to it. But be a few weeks, I think, where I'll have to, you know, catch up on a lot of wrestling, including Wrestle Kingdom and all the other early January Puro shows. So, well, the schedule might be a little weird, but, you know, for the rest of the year, we got this episode, obviously. 2 weeks from now, we'll be doing the another edition of Tokyo Dome Retro Roulette leading up to Wrestle Kingdom. So, you know, any Tokyo Dome show, pick some random matches out of it. It was fun the first 2 times we did it. So definitely going to enjoy doing another one of those. Doesn't have to be New Japan. Doesn't have to be 1-4. And then right before I leave for Vegas on January 1st will be the annual awards show, which we are still doing. So that will be the 5th annual Wrestling Omakase Awards. All guests should have gotten their ballots. So if you're a guest, and if you're a guest in 2021 and you do not have your ballot and you're listening to the sound of my voice right now, please make sure you get a hold of me somehow, Twitter or Voice Wrestling Slack or Discord or Carrier Pigeon, whatever the fuck you want to do, and let me know that you never got a ballot, and I will get you your ballot. So
yeah, I can safely say I received my ballot for the first time ever, so very excited to have received that. And, you know, not to spoil anything, but based off of all of our conversations this past year, really excited to vote for WCW as promotion of the year in 2021.
There you go. But yeah, so obviously, you know, you got till January 1st to fill that out. If you're listening and you are a guest, you know, if you're new around here, it's not a public ballot. It's just a Basically, it's just a balloting of all the Omakase guests for the year. Since we obviously have different guests each week, that's where I got the idea to do this awards for the guests for that year vote on the best and worst of the year. So we'll have our annual awards episode on January 1st. That's when I'm recording that. So literally the day before I fly out to Vegas for the week. So definitely check that out coming up here. Obviously, everything's still free feed since the Patreon is still currently on hiatus. So there you go. Let's get into the subject of this week's episode, which is the WCW Starrcade Retro Roulette. Obviously, Starrcade started out as a Thanksgiving tradition, but then got bumped off of that Thanksgiving tradition by Survivor Series, as we talked about on the last episode, the Survivor Series Retro Roulette. So it became a December tradition, usually late December, not always though. Some of these are more like mid-December. Now for this one, for people who are, if you're listening to a Retro Roulette episode for the first time, pretty simple concept. We take all of the shows of a certain theme, obviously in this case, Starrcade pay-per-views. I put them in a randomizer. I get 6 random years of the show. And then from each show, I put all the matches in a randomizer, and I get a random match from each show. Now, I only did it for the, quote, WCW years, so I believe that started with 88. Let me just confirm that, actually. I didn't include any years before Crockett sold it. Yes, 88 was the first one eligible. So I didn't include any of the years from when Crockett sold it to, before Crockett sold to Turner. This was mostly just, mostly just because, it made sense to do it to start with the Turner years, I guess, because, it is a WCW show, not NWA, even though they did call the first few of them NWA. But second of all, I just don't know anything about pre-88 WCW. I mean, it's just not something I've really watched. I think NWA Starrcade starts in 83, and I've just never watched any of that stuff. So, it was more like I just really would not have much to add on, early to mid-80s NWA. It's one of those blind spots I should definitely go back and watch at some point, but I just have not watched it. So
I was going to say, totally understand your logic. There is actually some really good stuff from that era of Starrcade as well, though. So one of those, if you do ever have the chance to revisit it, and Lord knows there's more than enough wrestling out there easily available to watch. So not pressuring to or anything, but there's definitely some cool stuff from that era.
So there you go. The shows that we ended up getting, we got 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, and 2000. So the randomizer gives us the entire mid-90s, starting to get into the late 90s, and then it skips 99 because it hates Vince Russo, I guess, which is understandable, and then gives us 2000 instead. So that was very interesting. I was kind of hoping we'd get some Battle Bowl stuff and other early 90s stuff, but I love that early 90s WCW period. That's very inconsistent, obviously, but very interesting.
Yeah, that's my wheelhouse, is that time period. So on the one hand, I was disappointed not to get anything from there, but on the other hand, it was good to revisit some of these other matches. Well, kind of good to revisit some of the other Starrcade.
So we'll get obviously into the match we got on each one as we go. But yeah, obviously you can watch all this stuff on Peacock in the US or in the WWE Network overseas. So we start with Starrcade 94 Triple Threat, December 17th, 1994, from the Municipal Auditorium. I don't know why I suddenly can't talk. In Nashville, Tennessee, a claimed crowd of 8,200 and a pay-per-view buy rate of 0.6, which, to be fair to fucking Brutus Beefcake, was way down from what WCW was doing with Hogan in earlier months since he came in back in July. But it was still a lot higher than 95, as we'll get to in a second. But yeah, this was I think most people consider this to be the nadir, right, of the Hogan era of WCW, the early Hogan era at least, where he basically decides that he wants to wrestle his buddy Brutus Beefcake in the main event of one of WCW's biggest shows of the year, which is quite the decision, honestly.
Biggest event of the year, and had retired Flair shortly before.
Waited
to start his feud with Vader after. Had to get Beefcake in for Starrcade. It's the only angle that made sense.
So let's go through the card here. Obviously, I'll tell you the match we got, and then I'll let you know if there's anything else I would have rather gotten. So Vader beat Jim Duggan in 1206 to retain the U.S. title. Alex Wright defeated the future Triple H, Jean Paul Levesque, in 1403. Johnny B. Bad defeated Arn Anderson in 1121 to retain the TV title. That would be the match that we got assigned here. The Nasty Boys defeated Harlem Heat by DQ in 1749. Thank God I didn't get that one. I remember that one being horrible. Like 18 minutes with the Nasty Boys and the Harlem Heat. It just sounds horrible. Mr. T defeated Kevin Sullivan in 350. I very much forgot not getting that. Sounds amazing. Sting defeated Avalanche by DQ in 1526. Also remember that being horrible. This is a horrible show, by the way. Like really, really bad. We probably got either like the best match or the second best match. I can't remember if Vader Duggan might have been better, but
I was going to say, based off my memory, I think Vader Duggan was very slightly better just for the two stiffing each other, but that's about it.
Yeah, these other matches are all horrible. And the main event, Hulk Hogan defeats the Butcher in 1207 to retain the WCW title. So they obviously couldn't call him Brutus Beefcake, okay? And he debuts in WCW just kind of as Hogan's, he's just suddenly there with Hogan as his flunky with Jimmy Hart. And, Hogan calls him Brother Broody, I think, which is apparently, I think that's what he also called him in WWF for the two team together. I'm pretty sure. But
that
I guess
right, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess they thought that, they can't sue them over that. But then he turns out to be the mysterious masked man who had been attacking Hogan, and to help Ric Flair. I don't know if it's ever explained why he did that. But obviously when they pull the mask off, and Hogan reveals it was him, the announcers start yelling, this man has butchered his friendship with Hogan, to try to get over this name over. And it just sounds so like no one on the face of the earth has ever yelled out that a man has butchered his friendship with another man. Like, it's not a saying. It's not a thing. So it just sounds so ridiculously unnatural. And it's like, okay, we're just trying to get this new name over, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. It also doesn't help that the new name also has like a generic 1970s territories wrestling feel to it. It's like the Butcher. Just
he comes out like chopping his hand, to signify he's a butcher. It's really horrible. And he's got Avalanche, who is I should have mentioned is John Tenta, Earthquake, Avalanche, har. And Kevin Sullivan in his corner. But yeah, that main event was not very good either, if I remember correctly. No. But we did get a good match here, so that's good. So basically the deal here is Johnny B. Bad, people don't know, that's Mark Marrow. He was the World TV Champion at this point. He was originally scheduled to defend his title here against the Honky Tonk Man. You can see that in the video, honestly. Like, the opening video shows the Honky Tonk Man breaking a guitar over his head and says that's the title match. Now, Honky's run in WCW was extremely brief. He debuted in August. He started a feud with Johnny B. Bad for the TV title pretty much right after he debuted. But apparently the issue here was Honky Tonk was on a per appearance contract. He was getting $1,000 per shot. Not bad, not bad money at all, especially in 94, getting $1,000 just to show up and, cut a promo even. But you have to remember, though, this was when this was the era of WCW going back to 93 with Bischoff in charge, even before Hogan, where they were handing out guaranteed contracts to like anybody with a pulse. Like the famous one that people always bring up is, Randy Savage's brother, the Genius, Lanny Poffo, who like had this 6-figure contract. They kept renewing automatically every year, even though he never once appeared on WCW television. They were just paying this man 6 figures a year to literally sit at home for his entire run. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I really need to find someone to do that for me.
I'm getting paid, 4 figures or 5 figures a year to sit at home. I don't mind that.
Yeah, but you're doing actual work while you're
I'm doing actual
work. So a little
work.
Different than Paffa.
But yeah, so Bischoff now, basically Bischoff didn't like him. Okay. So he brought him in as a favor to Hogan and Jimmy Hart. He would later call firing Honky Tonk his favorite firing. So he really did not like this man. But Honky Tonk is like, I want a fat contract like everybody else. And they told him no. So Honky, in turn, refused to lose to Johnny B. Bad back at Halloween Havoc. So that match goes to a 10-minute draw instead. I don't know why the fuck I had a 10-minute time limit, but I guess just because they're going to go to a draw. They booked the rematch for Starrcade here. But that night, Honky once again refuses to lose to Johnny B. Bad unless he receives a guaranteed contract. Now, he tried to go to Hogan to get him to go to bat for him, and Hogan refused, which started like bad blood between those two. And then what happens from there depends on who you ask. So Honky says Bischoff refused to give him the contract again, and then he walked out of the building. Bischoff says he fired Honky on the spot when Honky refused a job again. So whatever, either way, the match was off here, and Arn Anderson was your more than suitable replacement, which I'm sure it made the match a million times better.
Oh, God, yes.
He was a former 3-time TV champion at this point between the NWA and WCW versions, but it had already been quite a while since he last held the belt. He lost it to Bobby Eaton in May of 91, so like 3.5 years ago at Super Brawl. So they actually start playing Honky Tonk's music at first, but then it just stops, and Arn Anderson walks out to no music with Colonel Robert Parker and the Monster Ming. Ming was in this very cool like suit-wearing bodyguard period of his career, which I always loved this look from Ming. He looks like such a fucking badass in this suit. I mean, he seriously looks like someone who will kill you. Like, that is when they dropped that look to go back to the Island Savage gimmick, later in 95, I believe he joins the Dungeon of Doom and all that. I'm just like, the suit look was so much better. But
Yeah.
what do you...
Well, I mean, and just playing off that, like, I thought actually the way he started it was so smart, doing the Honky Tonk Man's music, and then the announcers being confused when he didn't come out, and then Anderson and his crew coming out to no music. It really made it seem more natural. And like, because of how Meng looked, like, I mean, the headcanon I just created was, Meng probably kicked Honky Tonk Man's ass backstage, and here comes out the new challenger. Good enough for me.
Tony Schiavone basically says that Honky Tonk Man was too scared to face Johnny B. Bad after he broke the guitar over his head recently, and Johnny was so furious. So a nice little subtle burial of the Honky Tonk Man on his way out the door. Johnny B. Bad comes off here firing off his confetti guns. I forgot how much the crowd loved him when he was a babyface. Like, they are really into Johnny B. Bad here. Okay, one thing, it is amazing watching these old WCW shows and just writing down like quotes from the announcers. Did you catch this one? Bobby Heenan goes, quote, out of nowhere. I have no idea what prompted him to say this. You'd think he would say this the following year when the New Japan guys were all there. But no, he said this here out of nowhere. He's talking about how much he hates Nashville. And then suddenly he says, quote, they should have bombed this town instead of Hiroshima. Excuse me? What? He just casually said they should have dropped a nuclear bomb on the town of Nashville, Tennessee. Even Tony Schiavone with that one is like, someone get the hook. It's time to get Braid out of here. Because it's like, Jesus. Sir, take it down a couple notches here. Why are we asking for genocide? Like, wow. He's like, I want the city of Nashville wiped off the map. It's like, okay.
I don't know. Maybe he knew what was coming next year. He's like, no, I can't use this line next year. That'll be just too much even for me. I got to get it out right now.
I was just like, wow, where the fuck did that come from? Early in the match, Arn tells the ref to open up Johnny's fist. Like, Johnny's big thing was his whatever that, did he call it the something punch? Can't remember what he called it. Something punch. I don't think it was Boogie Woogie Punch.
Was it the Tutti Frutti Punch?
Tutti Frutti Punch.
Yes.
There you go.
There we go.
The Tutti Frutti Punch. So his big thing was the Tutti Frutti Punch, and Arn was telling the ref to open up his fist, and then he immediately starts taking Johnny B. Bad down by the hair repeatedly. That was pretty funny. It's like, don't let him cheat. I'm going to cheat. Tony casually mentions early in this match that Colonel Robert Parker's new client, the Blacktop Bully, has just debuted. Do you know who the Blacktop Bully is? Do you remember this or no?
Yes, I do. Hold on. You tell me. My memory's not working, but yes.
It's Barry Darsow, the Demolition Smash, most famously. That's his new character. Now, Blacktop Bully would soon get in a feud with Dustin Rhodes, who was like feuding with the stud stable guys constantly at this point. And that would culminate in the infamous King of the Road match at Uncensored the following March in 95. They would both blade during that match against the orders of management. They would both get fired as a result. Only one would go to the WWF, though, in a very strange gold costume. So yes, in a weird way, the Blacktop Bully debuting right around this time started the chain of events that eventually gave the world gold dust. So
there you go.
I just thought that was awesome when he mentioned Blacktop Bully. I'm like, oh, it's coming. This is the start of gold dust.
I just remembered the actual literal like bully-esque gimmicks that he would do like on Saturday Night's Main Event and stuff like that. It's just like, okay, it's a little too on the nose of a gimmick.
Although he would come, so he gets fired March 95. He comes back to WCW late 97. Like you said, just kind of has the generic bullies, mostly on Saturday night. But then he gets repackaged as one of my favorite like low card characters ever. Do you remember this one? Mr. Hole in One, Barry Darsow.
Barry Darsow. Yep.
He is just a man obsessed with golf. I don't know why, but like whenever I would watch Saturday Night as a kid, I'd be like, Mr. Hole in One, that's my guy. And he would usually lose.
Now you got my brain running. Wasn't there even one Saturday night where he like, maybe I've just created this memory, but I remember him going like through all his previous WCW gimmicks, and so like he had like one quick segment as Crusher Khrushchev again. And anyway, maybe this is too off topic, but now just also in my head, I remember him like having these one-off appearances as his previous reincarnations as well.
Yeah, maybe he did do that. I don't remember that, but I just remember Mr. Hole in One very well for some reason because it's such a stupid gimmick, but for some reason, it's
still like better than Kerwin White. So
it is better for sure, better than Kerwin White for golf-related gimmicks. But as far as this match here, it's a fun back and forth match, lots of fast-paced action. In the end, Arn tried to cheat one too many times. He got caught with his feet on the bottom rope, and that allowed Johnny to schoolboy him from behind for the win. Sorry about that little hiccup. The 11 minutes here just flew the fuck by. There will be shorter matches we're talking about later that felt 10 times as long as this. I went 3.5 stars in this. I thought it was good.
Oh, wow. You really liked it.
I liked it more than you, I guess.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I just didn't say that. I thought there were some awkward spots during the match, so maybe that took it down a little bit. But it was just, good basic story, like you said, back and forth. And the thing that I really appreciate about watching Arn Anderson now these days is just the little things he does in the ring. So even at this point later in his career, and injuries definitely taking a toll, he just does, a combination of how he moves around the ring and the shithousery he does. It entertains you regardless. And so really appreciate that in almost all late Anderson matches, including this one. I think you highlighted the best moments for this match at the beginning when he was complaining about the closed fist before the opening bell even rang, and then immediately started cheating himself. And yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. Just not to the extent that you did. I gave it 2 3/4, but thought it was a fun opener that was maybe more fun than what the rating reflects.
Oh, there you go. So that is our first one here. Let us move over to the very next year, Starrcade 95, the World Cup of Wrestling, from December 27th, 1995, back in Nashville, the same building. A claimed attendance of 8,200, but this time a much lower buy rate, 0.36. So, the concept here did not get over with the WCW fans at the time, which, I feel like this could have worked a lot better just even a few years later, but did not work out well here. The pair of dark matches, DDP beating Dave Sullivan and the American Males beating the Blue Bloods. Then we had the World Cup of Wrestling match number 1, Jushin Liger defeating Chris Benoit. This one we really got jobbed. I'm gonna pretty much every match I mentioned, especially the first 2, and then also one more. I would have liked to get more than the one we actually got. And then there's even like the stuff at the end, the triangle and the world title match would have been better too. Yes. Yeah, so it opens up with Liger beating Benoit in 10:29 to put New Japan up 1-0. Then Koji Kanemoto beats Alex Wright in 11:30.
Yeah, and that's the match I actually really wanted. I mean, I love Liger, but those two wrestlers put together, I remember the match being really good, but just Kanemoto versus Wright.
Pete Kanemoto too.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just like a perfect combination, I think, in a WCW environment. Just that would have been fabulous to watch.
And apparently this was also for the junior title, according to this. So junior title and World Cup number 2. New Japan goes up 2-0. Then Lex Luger beats Masahiro Chono. So now it's 2-1 New Japan. Johnny B. Bad beats Masa Saito by DQ. That makes it 2-2. Then we have the match I wanted to get because I love this match. Shinjiro Otani defeating Eddie Guerrero in 13:43 to put New Japan up 3-2.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, I would have loved to get that match. There were so many good matches on this card.
Yeah, and we got this. Randy Savage defeating Tenzan, misspelled with an S. No, first of all, no first name. Second of all, they couldn't even spell his last name right. It was Tenzan with an S. instead of a Z.
I'll give Tony Schiavone credit though. He pronounced the name correctly the entire time. So even though it was misspelled, he did pronounce it with the Z.
But Savage beat him in 6:55 to even things back up to 3-3. Then Sting beat Kensuke Sasaki, the U.S. champion at the time, in 6:52 to win the World Cup for WCW in 4-3. Of course, America can't do a job. But yes, WCW wins 4-3. Then we had the WCW World Title number one contender triangle match, which was Ric Flair defeating Lex Luger and Sting by countout in 28:03. I remember this being awesome, but also having a horrible finish. So it would have been cool to see it again. But
yeah, that's my memory as well. Really good match. And I think if I remember right, I mean, it broke down a lot in those typical triple threat style matches where it was one-on-one a lot. But it really worked in
I think this
case.
one actually had a rule. Like I think
that's probably why I remember it that way.
Yeah,
so,
I think there was a rule where they would like tag in and out or something.
But then they had the awkward double count out finish
But yeah, this was really cool because Lex was he was in this weird space where he was sort of very much a tweener. And he worked as a total babyface against Flair and then worked as a total heel against Sting. It would go back and forth. It was kind of cool. So we're like a best of the three of them. So yeah, I remember this being pretty awesome. And, I'm sad we didn't get that one. And then Flair beat Savage immediately after he won his number one contendership to win the world title back in only 8:41. But yeah, so that's the main event. And there was also another dark match. So this is a weird one. They had Sasaki beat the one-man gang to retain the U.S. title after the match was restarted. But then I believe they just said the one-man gang won. Right? Isn't that what happened? Let me see if I can find it in the title history. The U.S. title history around this time was such a fucking mess.
Right. If I remember right, yeah, I think that was because I think originally they said like this was taped, like they taped at the end of the pay-per-view because they were supposed to air it, but then I think they never did air it. And like you said, just declared One Man Gang the new champion.
So I think they used the footage of One Man Gang beating Sasaki, but then didn't use the footage of the match getting restarted and having Sasaki win the match. I believe that's what happened. And then One Man Gang was champion. Yeah. So that was a weird little thing there. Or maybe New Japan didn't want him losing. I don't know. But it was very weird. But yes, let's get into the match we got here, which was Savage against Tenzan. So Savage is WCW champion at this point. Obviously, he's going to lose it at the end of the night to Flair. He won the belt at World War III the previous month. He loses to Flair on this show. He gets the belt back less than a month later on the January 22nd Nitro, only to lose it right back to Flair in the February 11th Super Brawl pay-per-view. We covered that in our Super Brawl episode. Did. That was a cage match where I remember we disagreed greatly on the quality. But that's the one with the Miss Elizabeth turn, when Elizabeth turns on him. And then, Flair starts giving away all his alimony money. That was just a really funny feud. So Savage, after losing the title in early 96, it takes him over 3 years to get the belt back at Spring Stampede 98. That title reign lasted all of 1 day, where he loses it back to Hollywood Hogan with the Bret Hart heel turn. The following year, he wins the belt again at Bash at the Beach in July 99 from Kevin Nash in a tag match of all things. And he loses it to Hogan the next night on Nitro again. So that poor guy had two 24-hour title reigns where he lost the belt to Hogan 2 years in a row. Like, no wonder why this man was so fucking bitter.
Right.
And that was Randy Savage's final world title reign of his career, obviously. Yeah. So.
And also, as we previously discussed on the Super Brawl one, this one started with the infamous, like I said, World War III match where Savage won it only because he was not doing anything while Hogan was pulled out of the ring underneath the bottom rope.
Yeah.
And then the referee was like, oh, Hogan must have gotten eliminated magically somehow. Let's make Savage the champ.
And Hogan freaks the fuck out about it, and the crowd fucking turns on him, and they're like, you know what? You're a little baby. Randy Savage, we're fine with Savage as our champion. But yeah, that was just kind of funny. But yeah, Tenzan, he enters here to maybe the most stereotypical Japanese song ever created. Like, what was this song? Like, I was like, someone was like, get me a Japanese song, god damn it.
I think WCW had about two music library, quote unquote, Japanese sounding songs that they just constantly used in rotation for any Japanese wrestlers for years.
I don't remember this one though. I don't know. Maybe this one. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not remembering.
I mean, to be fair, I wasn't listening to this one too much, but you talking about that just remind me of literally they would recycle the same Japanese sounding.
I remember one they had for a long time that was like like
Yeah.
a very upbeat, and that was not this one. This one was like a very different song, but that one I remember they used for a million years for like anyone Sonny Ono came out with, and this was this was a different one, I guess.
Well, I guess they had to dig a little bit deeper into the music library with having 7 wrestlers over on one night.
I guess so. So their tights here strangely match. They're both wearing these weird rainbow colored tights.
I'm so glad you mentioned it. I was like, they would have made a really cool tag team.
I was thinking
like
that too.
mid-90s.
It's like we should have gotten a Randy Savage and Hiroshi Tenzan tag team. So Tenzan just beats Savage down forever, mostly with chops and stomps. Savage tries to come back by ramming Tenzan's head in the top turnbuckle, but Tenzan has a very hard head, so he just completely no-sells it. This beatdown by Tenzan just drags on and on and on. And again, this match is only like, God, what did I say? It's less
than 7 minutes.
It's 6:55, and this beatdown feels endless. The crowd doesn't give a shit. There's like a very, very light USA chant at one point, but that's about it. Tenzan finally misses a moonsault. That lets Savage hit a very weak clothesline from behind on him, and that knocks Tenzan to the apron. Savage tries to suplex back in the ring. He eventually gets a very weak suplex over the top rope. I can't even tell if he was going for that. I don't know if he just...
It looked like a botch, whatever it was.
Yeah, he was either going for a regular suplex in the ring and just dropped him over the top rope, or he was going for a suplex over the top rope and just did it horribly. But either way, that's the setup for him to immediately drop the elbow off the top for the win. This sucked. This was pretty bad. I mean, the Tenzan beatdown took forever. Savage's comeback was almost non-existent, and he botched the big spot at the end. Now, I remembered that Savage around this time was kind of just a guy who would get his ass kicked and then drop an elbow and win.
Yeah, this was peak broken down Savage.
And boy, yeah, that was the case here. Sometimes that worked. I mean, he was so good at selling that, like, he could just sell forever and then drop his elbow and win, and you were like, oh, that wasn't too bad. It did not work here. I went 1.5 stars on this. Pretty damn bad.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was unfortunately a brutal match. And yeah, like you said, Savage during this time usually was a good seller, but he didn't care for selling for Tenzan on this one. I mean, he got hit a lot and allowed Tenzan to control the match, but it looked more like an inconvenience than he was in peril at any point. And then his brief comeback where everything other than the elbow didn't even look good, and that was the end of the match. So really not much else to say. I gave a 0.5 star for the matching tights and some of the hard chops, and that was about it.
You're even harder on it than me. The moonsault was fine.
That's true. I should have bumped it up to 3/4 of a star. I apologize.
Up next, we have Starrcade 96. Back in Nashville again. They love this fucking building. A crowd of 9,030 and a pay-per-view buy rate of 0.93 on December 29th, 96. So definitely the buy rate up a lot from the last 2 years for the main event here. The show here starts with a dark match. Mascarita Sagrada and Octagon Cito defeat Jarito Estrada and Puriata Morgan. Okay. That's I don't even know those is like WCW Lucha guys, so that's a little...
Yeah, no, I'm not fully sure about why that particular match was worked, but that's okay.
The show opened with the match I wish we would have gotten, which was Ultimo Dragon defeating Dean Malenko to unify the WCW Cruiserweight title and the J Crown. Although he would then lose the J Crown without losing the Cruiserweight titles. I guess he didn't unify them. But yeah, that one 1830. That sounds awesome. I mean, I really wish we had gotten that. I remember it being awesome, actually. Then we have the World Women's Title Final, which was Akira Hokuto defeating Medusa in only 7:06. And Hokuto would, of course, retire not that long after that, and she would be the only champion. Juice and Thunder Liger defeating Rey Mysterio Jr. in 14:16. That would have been great to get as well. A no GQ match, Jeff Jarrett defeating Chris Benoit in 13:48. I don't mind not getting that because I don't need to see Benoit with woman. I mean, that's like a different level of horrible.
Right.
Not even just watching a regular Benoit match. Watching anything from this.
Exactly. You don't need to see him with woman.
Yeah, this whole woman feud period. The World Tag Titles, the Outsiders, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall with 6, defeat the Faces of Fear, Ming and the Barbarian with Jimmy Hart in 11:52 to retain. The U.S. title tournament final, Eddie Guerrero defeating DDP in 15:20. That was the NWO costing DDP the match, and then because he kept refusing to join them basically. So this was like the start of his babyface turn. And Eddie after that was also a face, so they laid him out and stole the U.S. belt. Then we had Lex Luger beating the Giant in 1323. I mean, it's not like any kind of amazing match, but I remember being like pretty surprisingly solid. So I wouldn't mind getting that either. And it had a really famous finish where, Sting had just walked out on WCW, after Fall Brawl when they thought he had joined the NWO. And he comes out with the bat. He whispers something in Lex and the Giant's ears and leaves the bat in the middle of the ring, so you don't know whose side he's on still. And Lex grabs the bat and just destroys the Giant with it for the win. And the crowd just goes absolutely ape shit for this because this is the first time the NWO loses a match, I believe. I'm almost positive this is their first loss.
No, yeah. I'm pretty sure you're right. And this whole night was like the first night of setbacks for NWO, really. Yeah. And could have led to some really cool storytelling, but it was WCW, so they ended up over the next few years doing some pretty bad storytelling instead, but that's okay.
And then the main event, Roddy Piper defeated Hollywood Hogan in 1536 in a non-title match, which was not announced as such before the show. I can tell you that.
It was one of those awkward ones where they technically never said it was a title match either, but they also never said it was non-title. And again, Starrcade, biggest pay-per-view of the year, supposedly. You would think it would be for the title.
Yeah. But yes, this one, this is the match we got. So we got the main event here. So yeah, it's, basically the funniest thing about this is they said before the show too, that Piper himself drew up the contract for this match. So why is he a fucking idiot? Yeah, it's like, why give yourself a non-title match instead of a title match? It's very weird. But yes, that's one of the reasons why people probably thought it was a title match. But I guess they wanted Hogan to lose, but they didn't want to do the title match, so they didn't want to lose the title. Hollywood Hogan, he has quite the entourage here. He has Miss Elizabeth, Ted DiBiase, and Vincent. It's just like quite the collection of people. Right. Why did come out with Hogan? You'll never guess if you've never seen a Hollywood Hogan, from his heel run. Just like he basically is just aping everything Memphis he's ever seen. So what does he do when the match starts? He takes a powder immediately. Just goes outside to stall. They do finally start slugging it after stalling. Piper does do a pretty great job looking fired up as he beats on Hogan. But then Hogan quickly goes back to the outside to do some more stalling. And this match just drags on and on and on. Piper beats Hogan with a belt on the outside. They go back in the ring, and the ref, for some reason, allows him to continue beating him with a belt. I don't know why that's legal. But then he finally does take the belt away from Piper when he starts choking him with it against the ropes. So WCW rules, everybody. You can hit someone with a leather belt all you want. You just can't choke them with it. So good to know, I guess. DiBiase trips up Piper from the outside. Piper goes out there and stalks him around the ring like a complete idiot so Hogan can attack him from behind. It's like every babyface in the history of wrestling they still do this. I'm just like, what do you think's going to happen if you go after the person who is not in the match? It just doesn't make any ignore that person. They're not going to, they can't. Your opponent is going to go after you if you do this.
Yeah. Well, I know what I thought was interesting in this match is, for them billing it as two of the icons and two of the smartest men in wrestling within the first, 5 minutes or 6 minutes of the match or whatever, you had both wrestlers turn their back on their opponents and very slowly walk away. And it's like, well, what do you think's going to happen in that situation? You're going to get jumped from behind.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is just dragging out so bad. Nothing but punching and kicking and choking and eye raking. Some hair pulling in there too. Yippee-ki-yay. Hogan misses the big leg drop. Piper gets up. He fucking hits the most laughably weak-looking leg kicks I have ever seen in my life. It's like, buddy, you do not know how to throw a leg kick. Maybe leave this to Shibata or something. I don't know what to tell you. The Giant runs out at this point. Randy Anderson has suddenly come to be very interested in checking on Hulk Hogan. Now, this is one of the funniest things.
Yes.
This is the funniest thing of the match. The Giant lifts Roddy Piper up for the chokeslam. The spot that's supposed to happen is Hogan's supposed to walk over there and get kicked by Piper's legs while he's up with the chokeslam. Unfortunately, a fan in the front row, you can see this guy right on camera, suddenly decide, you know what, I'm not going to take this anymore. And like he jumps over the barricade, runs in to try to save Piper. He even like tries to knock DiBiase out of the way. Anderson and Hogan have to team up to take him out. That's a pretty funny visual already. It looked like Randy Anderson, the ref, got some good shots in too. And then finally Hogan wanders over to the world's longest choke slam, where Giant has been holding this motherfucker up for so long because of this fan intrusion.
And the look on the Giant's face during all of this, you can tell he's like, you can just see him thinking this all through, like, what am I supposed to do here? Do I keep holding him? Do I go attack the fan as well? Do I just choke slam it? Like, I mean, I felt bad for the guy. It's not his fault that the spot got blown, but you could just tell he was in like, oh crap, I don't know what to do mode.
Piper finally kicks Hogan from midair in the world's longest choke slam, and Piper then bites his way out of the choke slam, sort of awkwardly knocks Giant out of the ring. What does he even do to knock him out of the ring? I couldn't even tell. Like, was it like a really weak clothesline or something?
I think it was a weak clothesline, yeah.
Okay, because it just kind of looked like Giant fell out of the ring. It was very weird looking. And then Piper immediately applies a sleeper hold on the Hulkster. Hogan goes out. Ref drops the arm 3 times, and Piper wins. A horrible finish to a really horrible match. And I get, like you said, you can blame the fan run-in for making the choke slam so absurdly long, but that finish was still going to suck anyway. I mean, I got him up for the choke slam. Oh, here's Hulk Hogan to wander over and get kicked by him for no fucking reason. It's just like it was still horrible either way. It just made it even more horrible. And then we got a fucking sleeper, which was already like stupid even by 1996. The crowd does pop for it, I guess, but I don't know. This was Drek, half a star. Pretty much just the only reason why he gets half a star is for the crowd reaction. If you want to watch 15 minutes of nothing but punching and bad brawling, you found your fucking match. I guess. I don't know.
Well, John, let me respectfully disagree with you on this one. So everything you said was 100% true. I want to be clear about that. And Piper post-hip surgery was a mess. And
Kent State really does care about its students. And I think that if a student wants to feel supported throughout their time here and feel like they have someone to go to for help or for advice or just to talk, Kent State is the place for that.
Shop on eBay this holiday season to get more for your dough on stand mixers or get more for your buck on this season's hottest tech and gaming gear. And on eBay, you can even get more bling for less cha-ching on jewelry. You can get more because you save more on premium brands with eBay's exclusive deals. Get more when you get it on eBay.
Was never a Hogan fan in WCW, and yet somehow I ended up enjoying this match.
Wow.
I know, it's crazy.
The podcast, honestly.
I don't know. I liked that Piper approached it with just the fight feel instead of a wrestling match, and felt like Hogan was getting his comeuppance through it, as Piper was using a lot of the same cheap tricks in the ring that Hogan had been using as his heel character, and I guess, to be honest, as a face for years before. The crowd was into it. It had one of my favorite announcing lines of the night when Tony yelled out, "He's pulling out Hogan's hair," and then Bobby immediately is like, "Well, that shouldn't take long," which just left me laughing. So maybe that put me in a good mood for the rest of the match. I'm not sure. I thought it was absolutely hilarious that Hogan delivered belly scratches at one point in the match instead of his typical back scratches. And again, that had me laughing.
Look, it wasn't funny bad match, I agree, but it was still bad.
I'm just saying I enjoyed it, I guess, for what it was. I know I'm not the first person to say it. I'll also point out, though, on the negative side, this is yet another example of DiBiase being just a really awful generic heel manager, and it's amazing he kept getting put in heel manager positions.
Oh yeah,
he almost messed up the 1 foot grab, then he completely messed up a second one.
How many years did he drag down the WWF with that?
Right, it's unbelievable.
He was just not cut out to be a manager at all.
Yeah, I did think they missed what opportunity with the finish, with the crowd investment, and with, I think the crowd thought Hogan was going to win, because I think most of them thought it was for the title. that when he was into sleeper hold, he should have started hulking out of it like he used to before then that not working and actually succumbing to the sleeper. I thought that would have been a bit cooler of a finish. But then to give Randy Anderson credit, I like the look of surprise on his face when Hogan's arm dropped and he called for the bell. So he probably sold it better, the finish better than anyone else in the ring. Maybe I'm way overrating this. Like I said, maybe I was in too good of a mood, but I gave it 3 stars. I'm not saying it was great, but I enjoyed it for what it was. And yeah, and yeah, maybe I've been watching a lot of old 1980s Piper recently, so maybe I don't know, maybe I got a soft spot in my heart for him right now, but I actually enjoyed it. Much better than their cage match a few months later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's might be the biggest difference of opinion I've ever had about a match on this show, honestly, between 0.5 star and 3 stars. But
yeah, no, it's a pretty big one.
So the Outsiders run out afterward. Piper fights them both off for a second, and he simply leaves the ring. Giant walks out on the rest of the NWO. The Outsiders and Hogan then confront him at the top of the stage, and Giant points out correctly that nobody was watching his back when he fought Lex Luger in the semi-main. Apparently, he just had 6 to watch his back, and that was it. And Hogan tells him he dropped the ball, but then he says, thank God the NWO still has the belt. So I guess that confirms for the first time it's non-title. And this is all setting up Giant officially leaving NWO for the first time ahead of his title shot against Hogan at the first ever sold out, the NWO sold out, the next month, which he earned that title shot by winning World War III the month before.
I was about to say that, which, again, part of his departure was built on him never getting the title shot that he won from winning World War III in the first place. So
now, that makes sense. That does make sense. The problem is his actual tour to the NWO back in September, at the start of September, made no sense.
No.
I mean, completely nonsensical, considering Hogan had just screwed him out of the title at Road Wild, or Hog Wild, I think the first one was called, a few weeks beforehand. And it was he was just well, Ted DiBiase paid me. But it's you were just a world champion. And then he hit you with the belt and took it from you. Why would you join him? So, yeah, that turn made no sense. And I don't know why they bothered, given that they turned him back 4 months later.
But we'll have plenty of NWO turns that make no sense to talk about later.
At least his second NWO turn in mid-98 did make more sense. He had been feuding with Kevin Nash all year. So when the split happened and he basically joined up with NWO Hollywood to oppose Nash and the Wolfpack, that made a lot more sense than this turn did. But yes, Hogan gets his belt. He poses and celebrates to the NWO music to end the show. A very weird ending, considering he just fucking lost. I was why is this show ending with Hogan celebrating? He lost the main event. But really strange. But I guess the answer is because it's Hulk Hogan. So.
Right.
Then we go ahead of another year here to Starrcade 97. Finally got out of Nashville. This was held December 28th, 1997 at the time, brand new MCI Center in Washington, D.C. A claimed crowd of 23,000, which I'm quite sure is not true. Does not hold that many people. But yes, this is the very first pro wrestling event ever held at the MCI Center in downtown D.C. It opened less than a month earlier, December 2nd, 97. It's been the home of the Washington Capitals in the NHL and the Washington Wizards in the NBA to present day. And it became known as the Verizon Center after Verizon purchased MCI in January 2006. And it would keep that name until Capital One purchased the naming rights in August 2017. So it is now the Capital One Center today. And this is also the site of the very first episode of AEW Dynamite on October 2nd, 2019. So, kind of a interesting little note there, I guess. But yes, this show, I think another very infamous show for all the wrong reasons with one of the worst main event finishes of all time. The match we got, though, was the opener, the Cruiserweight title, which I was excited to get until I watched it. Eddie Guerrero defeated Dean Malenko to retain the title in 14:57. Then we had a 6-man tag with the NWO team of Randy Savage, who was about to turn, it was 2 months away from sort of turning on Hogan and starting the NWO split. Randy Savage, Scott Norton, and Vincent defeated Ray Traylor, who was the Big Boss fan, and the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott. Scott was only a few months away from his heel turn. They beat them in 12-12. We had Bill Goldberg beating Mongo McMichael in 6:34, which I kind of wish I had gotten just for, apparently it's legendarily horrible. I barely remember it, but it's the original heel version of Goldberg too, which nobody remembers. So We had a no DQ match with Saturn beating Chris Benoit in 11:06. A really horrible match. I remember this being really bad, so I'm glad we didn't get it. Buff Bagwell beating Lex Luger in 17:03. Why they gave these two 17 minutes is a question for our times. A U.S. title match with DDP beating Kurt Hennig in 11:09 to win the title. The Control for Monday Nitro match, when they were teasing, going to NWO Nitro. Larry Zbyszko beat Eric Bischoff to keep it with WCW by DQ in 11:30. Couldn't even beat Eric Bischoff clean. Special referee Bret Hart, who would be involved in the main event as well. And then Sting defeats Hollywood Hogan in 13:20 to win the WCW World title, except not really, because this is the infamous fast count that's not a fast count match. Yeah. I went and rewatched it again just because I wanted to see it. Basically, I put it on for Nicole, and I was like, Nicole, what do you think of this count? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, what do you think of the count? And she's like, it looks like any other count.
Right.
I was
perfectly
like,
normal.
Perfectly normal. I was like, exactly. Now, do you think that is a fast count? And she thought about it for a second. She's like, maybe a little tiny bit. And I was like, it's not a fast count. That's the whole point. It's not a fast count at all. So the idea was that Hogan at one point, they built this matchup, Sting and Hogan, for 18 months. All the way back to Sting walking out in WCW, maybe not 18 months, maybe it was like 15 months. But back at Fall Brawl in 96. And, Sting, he just walks out too. That was so weird to me. Even as a kid, I was like, he does all these crazy entrances, and this time he just walks after some kid introduces him. It was like some creepy kid voice introduces him. It was really bizarre. But yeah, he just kind of walks out. Apparently Hogan and Bischoff were mad at him for like showing up in supposedly bad shape or something after having all the time off. And I'm like, did he look out of shape to you? He didn't look out of shape to me.
No, I assumed he meant like maybe to expect him to be more ripped or something. I don't know.
Fine.
He looked fine. He looked more than fine. Like he looked like a credible wrestler in the ring against Hulk Hogan, which is all that you need for the type of storytelling that you're doing.
And so he basically, the story is Nick Patrick is supposed to be reverting to his old NWO referee habits and fast counting Hogan pinning Sting after Hogan drops the leg. Now, I've always heard the story here is that Hogan paid him before the show to do a regular count instead. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just an urban legend. I don't know why the fuck else he would do it.
Right.
He's insisted that he just thought it was a fast count, but like, how could you think that's a fast count? It wasn't a fast count at all.
It was obviously not a fast count. Like in wrestling, you make things obvious so the crowd gets it. And so when a referee does a fast count, it's not just a fast count, it's an absurdly fast count. So that the fan who's sitting in the back row understands what they just saw. This was nothing even close to
I don't even think this was like even a faster count than like this was like you did 1, 2, 3. I'm like,
no, it was legit perfectly normal.
I was like, what is going on here? Yeah. So all the water looks like Hogan just hits his leg drop on Sting and pinned him clean after all that. But then Bret Hart mumbles, "It's not going to happen again," into a microphone. You can't even hear him say it. And he throws Hogan back in the ring. And it's like, what's not going to happen again? Hogan beating the man clean? Obviously, they were referring to Survivor Series.
Right.
Yeah. But he throws Hogan back in. He punches out Nick Patrick, and Sting submits Hogan. Then the next night, everybody celebrates this. The next night, they do a rematch. It goes to like a no contest, and they strip Sting of the title. So the win gets nullified on top of it. It's like they could not have made this guy look like more of a dork if they tried.
Yeah.
And then, he does beat Hogan finally. They make him wait like 2 months till Super Brawl in February. He beats Hogan with help from Randy Savage in the NWO split. So he can't even beat him clean. He needs Randy Savage's help to beat him. And then he finally wins the world title, and he holds it for all of 2 months before he loses it to Savage at Spring Stampede. And then Hogan gets it back the next night. So WCW, everybody. I mean, this really was like the beginning of the end. I mean, this was like the fucking shark.
Right. I mean, that was going to be one of my big points for it. And just to give some context for all of this, like everyone remembers the infamous main event and everything that comes after. But this night, I mean, we all make fun of Shivani for it at various times, the biggest night in professional wrestling history, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that would have been still slight hyperbole for this night, but this was truly, like, going into it, a huge pay-per-view for WCW, one of their biggest pay-per-views ever as a company.
I remember a friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine, had a giant poster of this show, like, on his wall above his bed for like months leading up to it.
Yeah.
Like, this felt like the biggest deal of all time.
Yeah, I ordered this I was ordering most of the WCW pay-per-views at this time, and I was still living at home in high school, and my dad would occasionally watch some Nitro with me or whatever, but he said, "Hey, can I watch the pay-per-view with you?" And I was like, "Yeah," and we watched it together, actually. I think it was literally the last pay-per-view he ever watched with me, and, like, we were both pretty pumped going into it, and the problem, too, ended up being it wasn't just the main event, and I'm sure most of the listeners got this as you went through the card as well, but the whole night just ended up being so underwhelming. And then you had the main event and it ended like that. And like I said, going into it, they had all the hype. It truly felt like just this giant opportunity. And it was just a huge swing and a miss. And really, like you said, set the stage for the last few years of the promotion.
Yeah. It really is like the beginning of the end, because a few months later, obviously WWF wins the ratings battle for the first time, I believe in March 98, maybe it was April. And it just kind of, they go back and forth for a while, and then WWF really pulls ahead, in the fall of 98. And really, at that point, WCW wins very few ratings battles. And then, the thing we're going to talk about at the next Starrcade is like what really starts them all the way down the shitter. But 98 was like a horrible year for this company that they still drew well, and they still did great ratings based on the momentum they've built up. But yeah, they really started flushing things down the toilet here. And, really, what the way they treated Sting here, really was a big part of why they, they ruined people's goodwill.
The way they treated Sting, immediately showing they had no clue how to use Bret Hart in WCW.
Yeah. They got really lucky that Goldberg came along when he did, because that probably, if anything, just staved it off their decline.
Yeah, no, it gave them an injection of energy that they needed, and they would have folded probably even sooner if it wasn't for the Goldberg run.
But there you go. So let's get into our match here, which again was the opener, Guerrero beating Malenko in 14:57. So yeah, this Eddie is in the middle of his original big heel run in WCW. He won the Cruiserweight title for the first time from Chris Jericho. Soon after his heel turn, he beat him for the belt at Fall Brawl in September. He lost it to Rey Mysterio at Halloween Havoc, the famous title versus mask match that Rey was originally scheduled to lose. They would get that mask off him about a year and change later, of course. But then Eddie wins the belt back from him a couple weeks later on the November 10th episode of Nitro, and he's the champion here, obviously. So the first big spot is Malenko just fucking murdering Eddie with a powerbomb after catching him off the ropes, trying a rope walk spot. And he follows it up with one of the hardest Alabama slams you'll ever see. Just brutal stuff. And at this point, you're thinking, here we go. Yippee-ki-yay. Yeah. And it's like the crowd is going crazy for that. And man, the match falls off a cliff after that, unfortunately. Eddie does take this like big running power slam. He kind of no-sells it. He acts like he's all fired up, tells Dean to bring it, then he immediately runs away to the outside when Dean goes after him. I love that. That was great. Just classic Eddie Guerrero. But after that, he starts targeting Dean's leg, hits a chop block in the ring, and this just goes on forever. The leg work just goes on and on and on. He does eventually set him up with the ring steps against the post and drop kicks the steps into his leg, and that was kind of a cool spot, I guess. But then Eddie just kind of puts Malenko down with a drop kick to the knee, a missile drop kick to the knee. That was kind of cool. Then hits a frog splash to the knee off the top, and that's a pin. Like, when that was the pin, I was like, excuse me? Like, that's it? It was just such a weird match here. Like, you see the Eddie versus Dean as the opener of Starrcade. You figure it's going to be fantastic. It starts fantastic, but it just falls off a fucking cliff after that. And I completely forgot how disappointing this match was. After Eddie starts working on the leg, it looks more like an Eddie squash more than anything, which is weird because I think he loses the Cruiserweight title like the next night on Nitro.
Yep. So it's like Ultimo Dragon the next night.
So it's like, why do they have him squash Dean so bad? I don't know. Psychology was sound, but just wasn't much to it at the end of the day. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine, but man, you were expecting more, especially these 2 names, and then the way it starts, you're like, here we go. And then it doesn't live up to that at all.
Yeah, this one we're in much more agreement about. Really enjoyed Eddie being in full sleazy heel mode. Loved Malenko in the early going, not just the moves that he was doing, but he was showing some fire, which he doesn't always do. And I thought that made a lot of sense too in the context, because the two had been feuding on and off for most of the year before for various titles. So completely made sense. Some great opening. And then, yeah, and the pace just got slowed way down more than what I was expecting. Not that it was bad or anything. Like, I thought it was still fairly smartly worked, even if it was more Eddie dominant than I expected. I enjoyed that they actually had all the leg work directly lead to the finish with the missile drop kick to the leg. So, that was nice to see that it wasn't just time wasting. It was a good match. I went very slightly higher than you, 3.25. But getting back to what I said earlier about this whole pay-per-view being disappointing and underwhelming, the fact that this match was only around 3 or 3.25 based off of our perspectives, that was a part of that disappointment. The WCW Cruiserweight division was on fire at this time. Eddie Guerrero had really grown into his character. This was supposed to be one of the biggest nights in the promotion's history. These two should have torn down the house with each other. And instead, you got a perfectly pedestrian match that still, I feel quite comfortable saying, ended up being match of the night. And it was just a nothing match, really, that led to the champion losing the belt on TV the very next night. And just really unfortunately set the stage for the whole card. So
yeah, like you said, it probably is match of the night because the rest of the show fucking sucks.
Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, like, I'm really not kidding. I still to this day remember sitting there, like, watching this pay-per-view with my dad, just like every match feeling like, what is going on? Like, because like not even be able to make sense of it. It's like, why are none of these matches being any good? And like especially like the Larry Zbyszko, Eric Bischoff semi-main event, I remember it felt like that just took all night to happen. And then the main event happened and it ended the way that it did. And like, I understand why my dad never asked about watching another wrestling show with me after this one. It was just, oh, what a horrible card it ended up being.
So there you go. Starrcade 97, everybody. The beginning of the end. And then
Please don't rush out to watch it.
Actually, maybe we should say the beginning of the end. And then 98 Starrcade. The next one we got here is the end of the beginning of the end. Because, boy.
Yeah, we could hit a lot of the same notes for this one.
So Starrcade 98, December 27th, 98. The same building, MCI Center. This time a much more realistic attendance of 16,066. I forgot to get the pay-per-view buy rate for the last one. What the fuck was it? Because I want to compare. Actually, these two. I remember the 97 one did a crazy buy rate, which probably should have been an indication to put Sting over. Yeah, this did a 1.6.
Yeah,
I think is the biggest buy rate they ever did.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it was. Like I said, I can't express enough, like, going through it at the time, like, how big of a night this was for WCW.
All they had to do was have Sting beat him in like 5 minutes. That's all they had to do.
Yeah, if they would have had Sting just, beat him in like a squash or even a competitive squash, nobody would have remembered everything else under delivering the previous 2.5 hours. They would have just remembered that moment and they could have built on it, but they failed to do that.
So 98 still does a very, very good, not nearly as good, but a very good 1.15. Which is, shows you how hot Goldberg was, and Kevin Nash was very hot at this point too, which I think is one of these things that's less remembered in history, which because of what happened next. But we'll get to that in a second. So Starrcade 98, like I said, from MCI Center again, opens up with the match I wish we could have gotten, the Cruiserweight title 3-way. Kidman beating Juventud Guerrera and Rey Mysterio Jr. in 14:55. Boy, howdy, I'd love to get that match. The second match was Kidman beating Eddie Guerrero in a singles match in 10:49 for the same Cruiserweight title. This was the LWO storyline, basically. Then we had Norman Smiley versus Prince beating Prince Iaukea in 11:31. Don't know why that's on the biggest show.
Thank goodness that was on pay-per-view.
Perry Saturn beat the Cat in 7:07. Brian Adams and Scott Norton with Vincent beat Fit Finley and Jerry Flynn in 8:56. Why is this shit? What is with this undercard? I mean, Jesus, we could have gotten a lot of shit on this card.
Yes.
Conan beats Chris Jericho to retain the TV title in 7:27. I'm sorry, we couldn't find more than 7 minutes for Jericho and Conan. We needed all 9 minutes for Brian Adams and Scott Norton against Fit Finley and Jerry Flynn. Like, Jesus. Then we have Eric Bischoff beating Ric Flair in 7:08.
Eric Bischoff wrestling on back-to-back Starrcades, definitely needed.
That was like the Flair. They set that up with the Flair heart attack angle, which is very strange. And yeah, I don't know, the Bischoff Flair thing. So this was like, I don't remember what they were. I think it was for control of the presidency, and then Flair beat him the next night. I believe that's what happened. So Flair beats him the next night on Nitro to become president, and that later turns into his bizarre heel turn where he starts calling himself the president of the United States instead of WCW. Very bizarre stuff here. Then we have the semi-main event, DDP defeating the Giant at this point in NWO Hollywood, but also out of his way out of the company. In 12:45, he would jump to WWF only a month and a half later. And then we have the main event. There's a match we got again, the main event. The WCW World Heavyweight title, no DQ match. Kevin Nash defeats Goldberg in 11:20. So another very infamous match here for very obvious reasons. So Goldberg,
to be fair, or I should say, in an announced no disqualification match, which is probably important context for some of what happened.
Goldberg's streak at this point was supposedly 173-0. That was quite inflated, apparently, which was also very stupid on WCW's part. It's like, fans loved the streak until they realized it was fucking fake, and suddenly those signs with the numbers suddenly started disappearing, compared to beforehand.
Right, because your sign would be wrong when you get to the building, and you're like, what the hell?
I remember Chris Jericho made a great joke about it once where he was like, this stepping on bugs count for the streak? It's like, where is he getting some of these? Because he'd be like 52 one week and then 63 the next week. Not as absurd as Sid's. I was
going to say, then WCW made it more absurd with Sid. But,
where it's like everybody he touched was counted as a win. Nash won the World War III Battle Royal to earn this title shot. He was super over as a babyface at this point. As totally. the leader of NWO Wolfpack.
Yeah.
Again,
NWO Wolfpack as a whole was over super huge. So like they had messed up the previous year, then they stumbled into Goldberg and NWO Wolfpack, and I was like, all right, cool. They've got this great opportunity to make up for their mistake last year.
And they're like, well, anyway. Yes, but given what's going to happen, I feel like people don't even remember how over Nash was. So they didn't just turf Goldberg's streak here. They also turfed the Wolfpack. Because, of course, Nash, a little 8 days later, he turns heel again in the even more infamous finger poke of doom on the January 4th Nitro. So that set up basically the final version of the original NWO.
Right. Killed their two hottest products in one night, essentially, or one week.
Yeah, 1 week. So that sets up the very ill-fated NWO Elite, where they, merged the two, and Hogan and all the other top members of the Hollywood unit started wearing the black and red. So obviously the black and red wasn't cool anymore. I mean, part of the reason why people like the black and red is because it's like, oh, now I can support the NWO, but I don't have to support Hulk Hogan, who is the biggest heel in the company, and who's been on top for the last 5 fucking years, and we're all sick of. So now we can be cool in the NWO and not fucking be Hogan fans. And they're like, well, what if we took that away from you? And they're like, you just put Hogan in the black and red too. Fuck you.
Also, if I remember right, led to some just really weird black and red outfits from Hogan, like flannel shirts tied around his waist while wearing jeans and stuff.
And they had the Hell's Angels with them on these Nitro segments.
Yeah,
it was the opposite of cool.
Yes, definitely.
And the NWO Elite very quietly petered out after just a few months. It was basically over by April or May.
Yeah. Well, if I remember right, even for not trying to make excuses for WCW, because Lord knows they don't deserve any, but they even set up the big NWO Elite angle, and I feel like half the wrestlers involved with it got injured in the next few months.
Lex Luger got injured, Hogan got injured, although the severity of his injury depends on who you ask.
Right.
I think Scott Hall got injured. I don't know. A lot of people got injured. We get a very strange introduction line from Buffer here. Quote, although he is a native from Detroit, Michigan, his accomplishment and glory from professional wrestling make him a citizen of the world.
I noted that exact same one. I'm so
What
glad you mentioned it.
What the fuck does that even mean? We're
He
talking about
always
Kevin
has-
Nash, to be clear, but
Right. Yeah. No, he always has the stupidest filler material, but even that one caught me off guard. I was like, what the hell did I just hear? I rewound it quick. I was like, no, I heard that correctly.
he's a citizen of the world because of his success, his accomplishment and glory. What the fuck are you talking? So does he not have to have a passport? He can just walk up and be like,
Right.
my accomplishment and glory from professional wrestling makes me a citizen of the world. So you can
Right.
let
True
me
global citizen, Kevin Nash.
What? Like, where did he come up with that one? I really like some of these, like you say, make no sense, but you can kind of see where he got it from.
Right.
This one, I have no idea. He's just like, I got it. Kevin Nash is the world. His success and his accomplishment and glory have made him a citizen of the world. Like, I really want to know that. Like, I want to sit Michael Buffer down and be like, my dude, where the fuck did this one come from? Please tell me. I mean, he has no idea what I'm talking about now. But we got to go back to 97 and be there.
I mean, we'll rewind the tape for him. It is available on the not award-winning Peacock network, and we'll show it to him.
Yeah. I'm just like, what the fuck, buddy?
I also, and this is a small point, I should say, and and like you said, Nash was over like gangbusters, so obviously they knew what they were doing. But to this day, I still find it funny that because a part I think of his overness was that he switched to a much more serious ass kicker gimmick kind of at this point. It's how he won World War III. He was still just dominating, and yet during the ring entrances, including this one, like just still that huge emphasis on the big sexy nickname. And I'm like, I don't know, like he's portraying this big ass kicker, and it's like big sexy, and it's like, oh, that kind of undercuts the image to me.
He originally called himself that as a joke, which is like
right, exactly.
One of the funny nicknames that get caught on. Because I remember the promo where he first called himself that. Like he came back. So basically, he got knocked. It was at the spring. They used to do that spring breakout episode of Nitro.
Right. Yep.
And he got knocked in the water. Okay, during some match. I don't remember what the match was. He comes back either a week later or 2 weeks later. Suddenly has blonde hair instead of brown hair, and he comes out and says he swam through the Gulf of Mexico after he got knocked into the water, and came out and realized he's big sexy. I'm just like, what the fuck?
And it's dumb, but it worked for his character at the time because that was kind of a part of the charm of his character. But then as he started pivoting the wheels,
that was weirdly the start of his babyface turn.
Yes.
Declaring
that's a good point.
That he swam through the Gulf of Mexico, and now he's big sexy. But yeah, I don't know. It's just maybe the weirdest babyface turn of all time.
Yes.
But WCW definitely was not boring in this period, that is for sure. But yes, this match, on the other hand, pretty boring. Exactly what you would expect. Lots and lots of brawling and punching and such. Just not much to it at all, really. Goldberg does finally hit the big spear on Nash after ducking a big boot. The crowd does go wild. Now, was I crazy? Or were some of them chanting Goldberg sucks right before that? I could have sworn I heard that chant.
You might have. I'm not sure. I thought... So going into this match, my memory was that the fans had turned on Goldberg a little bit, and that Nash was really hot. So I was expecting him to be the overwhelming favorite. But I felt like it was actually a really split crowd.
Yeah, it was 50-50.
Yeah, and in like a cool way, not the manufactured, like sometimes you see at wrestling audience ways where they take turns chanting for both. It was, it felt like half the building was just there rooting Goldberg and half was rooting Nash. That's what I took from it.
Yeah. So he goes to lift Nash up with the jackhammer after the spear. Nash hits a blatant low blow right in front of the ref, but it's no DQ, so nothing the ref can do. Both guys are down, and then we get some more boring offense from Nash. But Goldberg, though, he suddenly counters a front suplex with a spinning neck breaker from that position, almost like the Tanahashi twist and shout. Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool. And then he follows up with a nice little head and arm suplex. That gets a 2 count. He does some kind of very weird, I don't know what the fuck this was. He basically jumps in the air like he's going to do a drop kick.
That weird like spinning front kick or something almost. We need a Bischoff announcing this match. He would have explained to us what it was.
He would have given us the karate name.
Right.
So, but yeah, then the run-ins start right after that. First we get Disco Inferno, who was doing a gimmick at the time that he wanted to join the Wolfpack and they wouldn't let him. Goldberg takes him out quickly. Then Bam Bam Bigelow runs in, who's going to be in our next match. And Goldberg also takes him out quickly. But then Scott Hall shows up on the apron, disguised as event staff. One of these, for some reason, is one of these things I'll never forget. For like as far as like I have a really clear image of it from watching as a kid. Scott Hall suddenly appearing on the apron in this yellow event shirt with the cattle prod.
Right. And to be clear, we need to use the word or term disguised very carefully here, because he was wearing a yellow security polo shirt, but otherwise still had the toothpick behind the ear, the hair all greased up.
Yeah, it looked like basically like, oh, everybody around would be like, wow, Scott Hall really did fall down hard, I guess. Now he's a security guard. Everybody was talking Scott Hall. It's like, wow. Disguised in air quotes, it's true.
Yes.
But yes, he gives Goldberg the infamous cattle prod shot. Right. Goldberg does this ridiculous sell job for her.
Yep.
He falls down like he just got a fucking heart attack. And the idea here is that Nash never saw it. We will find out 8 days later. It was a conspiracy all along.
Yep.
But he hits the jackknife to pin Goldberg.
With Goldberg still spasming after the jackknife.
And Nash wins his first WCW World title that he will hand over to Hulk Hogan 8 days later for reasons that will never be adequately explained. But it also, of course, ends the Goldberg streak. So, yeah, this was not a good match at all. I gave it 1 star. Kind of cool Goldberg spots make it 1 star worth, but it was definitely not a match you'd call anything even resembling good. It was pretty damn bad. So,
yeah, just a couple things to add to it. One thing I did want to point out, because I thought it was so weird in this spot and for the Goldberg character. His whole character from pretty much the get-go, maybe 2-3 matches into his run, it's like he's just this insanely intense guy, and like he gets into his intense zone before the matches, and that's why they film him backstage and walk into the ring, and he was doing that as you would expect for this match. And then they have him stop in the hallways while coming down to the ring while in the full zone for the match to sign an autograph for a kid. I was like, that's really weird. I don't think the Goldberg character would do that. I think if anything, he would push the damn kid out of his way because he is ready to fight. So I thought that was really weird as well. I think you hit most of the main things in the match. I thought, Goldberg had some impressive spots. There was another one where he looked to basically easily throw Nash up onto his shoulders, almost like as a deadlift. It was just like, damn, sometimes you forget how physically strong Goldberg was at this time. But most of the match, unfortunately, was really boring. There was a weird segment near the opening where the exchange submissions, and Goldberg did his typical leg lock he worked in, and it looked okay. But then I remember Nash did a cross arm breaker of all things, and just seeing Kevin Nash use a cross arm breaker seemed really weird. And and then you had the finish, and that was a mess. But before the finish, it really felt like they were going for a colliding, like superpowers epic, and the crowd, to be fair to them, the crowd was treating it as such. But for myself, it just felt like neither worker was capable of carrying the other to that type of match. And so instead, it just led a boring exchange, or to me, boring exchanges that didn't seem to be leading to much. So yeah, unfortunately, just not really a good match, and then led to some absolutely awful WCW storytelling. And for various reasons, they just were never able to get Goldberg back fully on track after this.
Yeah.
And
they just killed Goldberg, just killed Nash, just killed everybody involved. So.
Yep. So yeah, I went 1.5 stars. So very slightly more than you, but just really disappointing match, unfortunately.
I mean, if they really wanted to do Nash heel turn, they should have had Goldberg retain, and then like have, Nash turn on him and cost him the title against Hogan or something. And that would have skipped the entire stupid finger poke of doom that, like, really just the finger poke of doom. It's one of these things where it's like, yeah, it was stupid, but it's one. It like really. I don't think it's possible to overstate how much it insulted people who have been following WCW for a long time.
Yeah,
who that belt meant something to. I mean, it just felt like a different level of stupid and horrible to people. Yeah. So,
and it just completely undercut Nash's character as well. Like, why would he do this? He had no reason. They never explained a good reason for him wanting to do this and make himself second fiddle to Hogan again.
I mean, all you had to do if you do it the other way, with Goldberg winning clean here, and then having Nash turn on Goldberg and cost him the title against Hogan. It's like, okay, that makes sense. He's mad he lost to Nash.
Yeah.
Or he's mad he lost to Goldberg.
Yeah, he's frustrated. He realized he can't beat Goldberg on his own. This is what he had to do. He wanted his revenge on Goldberg. This was his way of doing it. Like, simple storytelling works in wrestling.
But they were in but all it came down to is like Nash really wanted to take the streak, and the deal he made with Hogan to take the streak behind the scenes was, I'll beat him, and then I'll do the fucking finger poke, and you'll get the belt. And it's like, this is where backstage politics really hurt,
right?
The on-screen product, and really hurt what people were watching at the time. So,
unfortunately,
so we move forward now. We skip Russo's year. We go to 2000, the final Starrcade, back at the MCI Center, but you can see the damage they've done from 99-2000. This show drew a crowd of 6,596 and did a buy rate of 0.11. So think of the other buy rates we've been talking about. 0.11. That was probably like 75,000 people or something.
Yeah.
That was probably there was a site I remember that broke it down by people. Let me say WCW pay-per-view.
And while you do that, again, just to connect the maps from people, that's almost 17 times less buys than the show just 2 or 3 years earlier.
Yeah. So the estimate for this for 99 or for Starrcade 2000, so that would be 50,000 buys. So I was even too high at 75,000. Yeah, and 98, would have been 460,000 buys. So 410,000 more, and 97 would have been 700,000. So
just
you can see just how far and how fast they fell here, all the way down to 50,000 buys. And that's, this actually was a bad number for the time. Even the ones before this, New Blood Rising did 85,000, Fall Brawl did 75, Halloween Havoc did 70, and then Mayhem in November did 55. But things recovered a little bit for Sin. Back to 80,000 in January, which was the infamous Sid breaks his leg show.
Yep.
And then Super Brawl Revenge did 70,000 in February, and then Greed, the final pay-per-view in history, did 50,000 again. So there you go. But yeah, this show, definitely in the dying days here of the company before WWF would buy them in March. It starts out with the 3-way ladder match. Boy, I'm mad we didn't get this. 3 count, Shane Helms and Shannon Moore beat Evan Courageous and Jamie Noble and the Young Dragons, Kazuyashi and Jimmy Yang in 13-17. I mean, I don't love ladder matches, but I'm sure it's still the best match on the show by a wide margin.
Oh, easily.
Then we have Lance Storm beating the Cat in 7-24. Terry Funk defeating Crowbar to retain the hardcore title in 9-17. Wouldn't mind getting that either, honestly, just see Terry Funk. He wins the hardcore title from him. Then we get Chronic against Big Vito and Reno. They don't even have a match time here on Cage Match. I'm sure that was quite bad. Then we got the match we got here, which was Mike Awesome beating Bam Bam Bigelow in an ambulance match in 8:35. Then still a lot more matches with that. The U.S. title, General Ruction, of course, with Bill DeMott, defeating the franchise by DQ. Could not pin Shane Douglas in 8:35. Then we got a match I remember being pretty fun. The 6-man tag street fight, Jeff Jarrett and the Harris brothers beating the Filthy Animals, Kidman, Conan, and Rey Mysterio in 12:35. Then we get the World Tag Titles, DDP and Kevin Nash beating Chuck Palumbo and Sean Stasiak to win the belts. I believe the second month in a row they ran that match with that finish, with them winning the belts. So kind of weird. Then the semi-main event, this was during the period where Goldberg had to win all of his matches or else he'd be fired again. And he would eventually be fired. He beat Lex Luger in 12 minutes in a no DQ match. Do you remember how this eventually ends?
I honestly do not.
Okay. This I'll never forget for the rest of my life because it was one of the dumbest angles we've ever seen. So I don't remember what show it was. It might have been the next month or it might have been 2 months later. But Goldberg is I think it's the next month. I think it's at Sin or whatever the hell they call it. So Goldberg is facing Luger and Buff Bagwell. So Buff turned on Goldberg at the end of this match to join up with Luger. And Ric Flair, before the show, introduces Goldberg to a friend of his, including and the friend's child. So a small child. Goldberg goes over to the child during this main event when Luger and Buff kind of go after him. And the kid maces Goldberg. So Goldberg gets turned on by a small child. And then that's how they beat him and send him packing because he's fired since he lost a match.
I still don't remember that at all.
So that was Ric Flair's heel turn. That was Flair's heel turn to join up with Steiner and Luger and all them to form the Magnificent Seven. A small child maced Goldberg.
Now, I will say, though, if they would have used my idea of Goldberg pushing the kid out of his way at the previous Starrcade, then it all would have made sense as long-form storytelling. But alas, they did not.
So the child turn. Then the main event, the Scott Steiner beats Sid Vicious in 10-15 to retain the WCW title. So I don't know if there's a lot there you would have preferred to get. Maybe, like I said, the six-man tag
really.
and the opener. That's about it.
Yeah, the opener for sure. The six-man tag, the Filthy Animals were super fun at the time.
Yeah.
That's probably about it, to be honest.
So I couldn't even tell you what the hell was going on with this match. Awesome was still in his 1970s gimmick at this point.
Yeah.
He was about to turn heel and join Team Canada a couple weeks later.
So if I remember right,
January 3rd Nitro.
I think this was set up because on a Nitro sometime before this, they did a Lethal Lottery tournament throughout the Nitro, and Awesome and Bigelow were a tag team, and they lost and then turned on each other.
Now, the pre-match video did not tell us that. They just
nobody referenced any of that, to be clear.
They quickly showed the two of them attacking each other a few times, and that was it. Very bizarre. But Awesome, he comes out here, he's in his 70s gimmick attire, but he strips the attire off before the match. I guess it's supposed to be symbolic. The announcers are also talking about how he could be a future world champion. Maybe he could have been before you guys made him the fat chick thriller. That 70s guy. Like this 70s gimmick is stupid. It's not even close to his dumbest gimmick WCW, though, since they made him the fucking fat chick thriller before this. Man, talk about misusing a guy.
Right. It's for people that didn't watch her, I mean, it was just amazing how much Awesome was over right before he jumped to WCW. Largely through him and Tanaka just absolutely killing each other in ECW.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he was over. He had a following. He had an aura to him.
Like, he's a big guy.
Right. Who can move like crazy.
He looks like $1 million. I mean, he has a great look. He's, he looks like a, good looking guy. Like, has a classic wrestler look.
Right. Happy to take big bumps for people.
Happy to take big bumps. I mean, he is everything you want. The only thing he doesn't have is the promo ability, really. Like, he does sound...
Which you can work around.
Exactly. So it's like that, of all the stuff, that's the easiest thing to work around, especially for like a heel. And they just were like, what if we make him fuck fat women?
Yeah.
What if we make him a 70s guy?
Yeah. Within like just a couple months of his debut, too. It was just almost immediately like, yeah, let's just make him infatuated with oversized women.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, no.
That's not what I would do with Mike Awesome, I have to say. But this match, though, just a lot of very dull brawling to a completely dead crowd. You can hear like WCW had a lot of fake crowd noise around this time, and you could always tell when it was fake because like the crowd is clearly sitting there doing nothing, and that definitely happened during this match. I could not believe it. Like if you told me, John, how long was this match? I would have guessed like 15 minutes at least. Like I can't believe there's only 8.5 minutes. It just dragged on and on and on. Awesome did take a nice back body drop through a table at one point. That was a nice little bump.
Yeah.
And then Bam Bam, they fight to the ambulance. Bam Bam rips off some very fake looking plastic safety lights off the top of the ambulance. What's really funny is Tony's yelling about how they're bolted down the ambulance, but you can hear like Velcro or glue or something like peeling off as he's I'm like, how fucking stupid do you think we are, Mr. Tony Schiavone? Awesome then gets the lights from him though, hits Bam Bam with it twice, and Bam Bam falls through the very obviously gimmicked roof of the ambulance. Did not look very impressive at all, especially once they showed the other shot.
I was going to note it was the replay that killed it. Like it didn't look great, but it looked fine. But then they decided to show it on replay like half a dozen times or something. And like on almost all the replays, it's from like a higher angle.
Yeah.
And you can see that it's just like a particle board that they had put over the roof spot that he fell through.
I mean, there was one angle in particular they never should have showed because it really showed.
Yeah, no, it was just brutal. It's like, how do you show that on TV?
Yeah, like maybe don't show that one, you idiots. I don't understand. Like if they had not shown that angle, it would have looked fine. Right.
Especially since it was honestly the 4 for 5th replay at that point. Like it was in the can. They knew what it looked like. It's not like it was a live shot. And they're like, yeah. Let's show that one as well.
But yeah, so this was another nothing match and a long series of them on this episode. 1 star for a couple decent bumps. but another pretty fucking bad match. And ended things on a sour note, I guess. But look, that's what the randomizer gave me. What do you want me to do? That's why we do the randomizer. It could be good, it could be bad. And boy, other than Johnny B. Bad and Arn Anderson, there's a lot of bad on the show.
Yeah, don't have much really to add. One thing I'll say, Bigelow was very obviously, I think, in fairly rough shape in this match.
Yeah. He looked like he could barely move.
Yeah, and in fairness to him, I think this was maybe 5 or 6 months after he severely burned like a lot of his body, saving a family from a house fire. So, I assume he probably healed pretty painfully for that. And you can tell even by his standards, he was a bit heavier in this match than what he had been for a lot of his career. So probably shouldn't have been back in the ring at this point, but so be it. I did think one part was kind of funny. Like at first I thought it was interesting. He wrestled right away back towards the ambulance, which was like, cool. That makes logical sense. You win the match by getting someone in the ambulance. Of course you would fight there quick. I'm glad they're not wasting too much time there. But then later in the match, Awesome made his way back to the ring. And then, which I was like, oh, well, that kind of defeats that good point, I thought. But then the announcer started talking about like how important strategy is in a match like this. And I'm like, I don't know. It's a mid-card ambulance match. Like, is strategy really that important? So
beat the other guy up and put him in the ambulance. So
right. I don't think there's a lot of strategy to that. But I thought it was funny they harped on that. And then, yeah, just the finish was what it was. I gave it 2 stars for a couple of spots. I did appreciate Bigelow punching through a window on the ambulance, and hopefully this one was gimmicked, unlike the one Goldberg punched through. And
it looked like it was. It looked like
it looked like it was. Yeah. And then
I'm not trying to be clear. I'm not trying to hate on them gimmicking things, but like
no, please do for the safety of the wrestlers. Like I want you to
just don't show camera shots that make it look completely stupid.
Right. And in fairness, I thought the window punch looked much better than the other 2 spots that we discussed that looked a lot worse.
Like if they had not shown that one camera shot of him falling through the top of the ambulance from so high that you could see it was clearly breakaway, it would look fine. I mean, you could tell. I mean, you could tell it was not a real ambulance roof.
Right.
Like you would not have had that visual proof.
No, it would have been fine. Right. Yeah. And then, my last note is just, so you hear the ambulance sirens as they start transitioning to the next segment. And like, I just quickly jotted to myself, it feels appropriate after, discussing WCW 3 times throughout the year that the final thing I hear on a broadcast is freaking ambulance sirens going off.
It does feel appropriate. That is for sure. All right. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here, Matt?
Not to plug, but I will say, again, since this was the last one of the year, I decided to go back through my notes, and I know you're going to be super excited about this. I actually put together my 5 best matches that we watched from these 3 shows we've done together, just to emphasize how much Lady Luck really did not help us out with these. So just super quick, if you will bear with it. I had Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko from Starrcade 97 as the 5th best match at a whole 3.25 stars. Vader versus Nikita Koloff at Halloween Havoc 92 as the 4th best match, also at 3.25 stars.
I remember liking that. I think I liked it more than you even.
I think you did. Yeah. And then, one of maybe our second biggest disagreement match, number 3, I had Randy Savage versus Ric Flair from Super Brawl 6 at a whole 3.5 stars.
Yeah, that I did not like at all.
And number 2, Rick Martel versus Booker T from Super Brawl 8 at 3.5 stars.
That was great.
Yep. And then a match that if you would have told me at the beginning of this project would have been my favorite, I would have just laughed it off as complete lunacy. The Nasty Boys versus the Steiner Brothers from Halloween Havoc 1990 at 4 stars.
There you go. I think you were higher on that than me, but it was good.
I was. And, I still stand behind that rating, though. And maybe it's just compared to the rest of the stuff we watched together, but that was a damn good match.
All right, folks. You don't want to plug your Twitter or anything, though?
You can find me at Archiving Matt if you're interested on Twitter.
There you go. So we'll be back in 2 weeks, like I mentioned earlier, for the Omakase Tokyo Dome Retro Roulette Volume 3. So we'll see what random Tokyo Dome matches we get this time. And then after that, the big awards episode on January 1st. So definitely tune in for that. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at Wrestle Omakase, Wrestling Would Not Fit. And I want to thank you as always for listening, and we will see you next time.
Some coffee's fast, but not fresh. Some coffee's fresh, but only after a long wait. Speedway coffee is made fresh at the push of a button, hot or iced, so you can have fresh coffee your way, right away. Find a store near you at speedway.com/locations.
Gearheads know that some projects need so many parts, it feels like you need a whole storage unit just to store them. That's what eBay Motors' 122 million parts are for. Think of it as your virtual parts garage. They've always got the right fitment at the right prices. Use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.